Hi there. Today I want to talk about the Green New Deal because I've been really bothered about this. So this is going to clear the air. And let me tell you why I'm bothered. Okay, there's been a lot of talk about the Green New Deal and OAC and all the things they're saying. And it's bothered me, the coverage. Yes, it's a horrible, horrible thing for our economy, blah, blah, blah. I absolutely agree with this. Socialist plans, you name it. But that's not what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about, and what's driving me nuts, because even in the right-wing media, is this idea that it's acting as if this is a good idea, period. So we only argue about the cost of it. It's not, it's undoable, blah, blah, blah. That's not the problem. That is not the problem. There is nothing clean or green about this, folks. This is it. Even if it were completely free, it costs us nothing to go to 100% renewables. That would be a terrible, terrible idea. Because renewables are unreliable, okay? They're unsightly. They take up way too much land. It's costly to maintain. It's just so undoable on a technical level. Forget about the cost, which is a huge, huge, huge issue. But it would mar the landscape. I'm an environmentalist at heart. In the past, I gave lots of money to the Wilderness Society. I'm actually a lifetime member of the Sierra Club. Oh, I'd have to die to get rid of that one, I guess. Not that I want to do that. And then here's the other thing that's not discussed. Even if we could somehow do this, it wouldn't make any noticeable difference in the climate. It wouldn't make any noticeable difference. Let me repeat that. I mean, it's just so frustrating to hear people talk about this like it's somehow a good idea, but we just can't afford it. No, it would make no difference in the climate. And nobody calls on them on this. So when OAC, that's Alexandria, okay, I forgot how to say her name. But anyway, that cute gal, that's like a little cute 6-year-old spouting off nonsense, frankly. I mean, her ignorance is appalling, but she's adorable. I admit it. She's adorable. She believes... But that we would be listening to her, okay, not good. Let me calm down here. You can see I'm riled up. So when I say it wouldn't make any noticeable difference in the climate, somehow is filtered to the media and the general public. I don't find this so much with scientists that I talk to that are knowledgeable on this issue. They understand there's a lot more to the climate than this. But there's this idea, and this was promoted by the IPCC, which if you do any research on the IPCC, you will know that it is a heavily politicized organization. The people that write the reports, the summary reports, are not the scientists. It is political people advancing an agenda. So they promote this idea that if you could lower CO2 emissions, you would decrease temperature. Well, I got this off the web, just talking about past temperatures of the Earth. And let me see if you can see this. I put it on my refrigerator. I put stuff like that on my refrigerator. That and a periodic table of the elements, but whatever. Okay, so what I've done here is I've circled the warm periods and then I've circled the cold periods. And you can see we have alternating times we have warm periods and we have cold periods. And before the current warm period, we had a cold period. This could be treated as one or breaking it up into two, because there was one that is referred to as the Little Ice Age. It was really, really cold. And we basically started coming out of that in 1850. And so in 1850 to now, we have a warming trend. Now the question is, why do we have a warming trend? Well, that also happened to coincide when we started more industrialization. So it was, some people have just said, well, the two, but correlation does not equal causation. More CO2, that's why we've got warmer. But pray tell, why did we get warmer in other times? Why? I want to understand this. I think there's important research in climate to be done. And the whole climate science area has been perverted, frankly. We're not doing enough studying this. We should understand this. So this is kind of funny. And it used to be called, the warm periods were called climate optimums, because human life, plant life, everything flourished much more. The bad times were the cold times. So we're in a climate optimum now. And then the question is, how much does CO2 contribute to the warming that we have? Well, here's something a lot of people don't understand. Well, scientists understand it, but just the general public. We don't actually know how much CO2 contributes to the current warming. Is the warming due half to CO2, human emissions of CO2? But in any event, if you look at CO2, CO2 is very beneficial. I mean, there's another way to look at CO2. It's part of the carbon cycle. And during the Carboniferous era and other times, the Earth, we got a lot of the carbon locked up with the coal deposits, the oil deposits. That's not, you could say that's not natural. And in one sense, we're freeing it up now. And perhaps that's a better thing, at least to free up some of it. And it is known that plants need less water when they have more CO2. So droughts are less of a problem. And the Earth has gotten greener. And it's thought to be, from some very good studies, it's thought to be because we have more CO2 in the air. And we only have 400 parts per million. I like to say, I mean, it's just because it's a nice round number, I'm trying to increase my carbon footprint because I think we would do better on Earth if we had maybe 1,000 parts per million. Keep in mind that every time you exhale, about 38,000 parts per million CO2 comes out of your mouth. So don't let anybody tell you that CO2 is a pollutant or is bad for human health. Because if that's the case, then don't breathe on a baby, don't kiss anybody, don't get close, because if you do, you are taking in a lot of CO2. It's kind of funny, maybe that's why, that old thing, talk to your plants and they grow better. Some people say that. I always thought it was kind of ridiculous, but maybe what they're doing is giving the plants more CO2. Okay, so CO2 is good. So this idea that we have to, let me go back to the Green New Deal, that we need to stop CO2 emissions. That is the problem. And then people conflate it, and they cleverly conflated it with clean air and clean water. I mean, I went to the beach yesterday. Of course, it was after a rain. It was so beautiful, so clear, just all over LA, beautifully clear. But like in 1948, when my late husband came out here to get his PhD at Caltech, and afterwards he interviewed at JPL under his mentor and thesis advisor, and the head of JPL, Bill Pickering, said, "Hey, Harold, why don't you come and work here?" And Harold said he drove out to JPL, which is by Pasadena. It's in Altadena, but it's in that area. He said it was just so smoggy, so depressing. He didn't want to work there. He ended up eventually working at Hughes Aircraft. And he also said he didn't even know there were the San Gabriel Mountains past Caltech. Now, I moved to Los Angeles in 1977 after I got out of the Air Force. So some of the air had been cleaned up. But they just started putting catalytic converters in cars. Anyway, we have totally cleaned up the air. The air is so clean. And this is while carbon dioxide emissions were increasing. So anybody that tries to conflate CO2, and I see the pictures I see the misinformation that's out there. They talk about it like it's pollutant. It is not a pollutant. Okay? So the two things that just drive me a little bit crazy is, again, even if we could implement this crazy plan, it wouldn't make any noticeable difference in the climate, even by the formulas that the IPCC uses. And I've only heard one person mention this, and that was Ben Shapiro. In fact, he's really pilloried this whole plan, and I encourage you to watch his, Daily Wire, their YouTube videos. He's really done a good job. So he's made me feel a little bit better, because when I've been watching Fox News, and they have various speakers on, nobody attacks the Green New Deal on whether it would even work, whether it would even do anything for the climate. So when people say, "Oh, it's like the New Deal," or "It's like the moon landing," well, those things accomplished something, or fighting World War II. Those things were important. They had a goal, and they achieved that goal. This would be doing something that would not achieve any goal. I mean, I absolutely think that we should be spending a lot of money studying the climate. What exactly is going on here? And we do have some people studying that, in fairness. And what we should do is make for climate resiliency. I mean, let's make sure we have really, really good electrical power, electricity, lines that don't go out. I mean, right now, if it's really hot or it's really cold, they're asking people to don't turn on their air conditioners if it's hot, or don't turn on your heater so much if it's cold. Are you crazy? Okay? When we need power, we should have it. And that's where we should put our focus. There was this one cute picture I saw where there were some windmills, and they were frozen during a real cold spell. While I'm on this topic, let me just say something else. It is just so insane. I don't know how to say it. It's and that is the talk about the polar vortex, and that's what's causing all the cold. It's kind of like, there's a lot of money invested in keeping this whole climate change alarmism. A lot of money invested. And it's like, oh my God. Now, I would kind of agree that maybe some weird thing about a polar vortex, but that's not what was predicted. Science, if you've got a good theory, it predicts what's going to happen, and then you see, oh, it does happen. It isn't that things happen and then you go, well, and then you invent explanations. These are called ad hoc explanations. So, when I was, a long time ago in the 90s, I was kind of concerned about global warming and what could we do about it, and started investigating a little bit, because it was just going to get, all the climate models showed it going warmer, 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 inexorably upward, okay? So, people weren't going to have snow anymore. They even said, your kids are never going to get to see snow. So that's what was predicted based on CO2 being the driver. And then around 1998, it plateaued. It really plateaued, okay? Despite we say, it's the hottest year ever. Do you know how much tweaking they have to do to get that? Do you know how hard it is to get a global temperature measurement? Based on what? Little temperature sensors? Just do a little of your own investigation. And the one I recommend the most is Tony Heller, Heller. His stuff is the most interestingly presented, and his YouTube videos are dynamite. They are so good. But he's not the only one. Don't think that he's just a lone voice out there. He just presents it the best. I've been reading about this through numerous independent sources about the problems with the temperature data. And Anthony Watts, Watts, appropriately. So he has this very good kind of engineering scientific site called What's Up With That. And I'm a regular reader of that. I get the email newsletter. And I do believe from a video I saw of him talking that he started that because he was one of the people that looked at those, the temperature data, and was very knowledgeable on it. And he was horrified. Usually when people look into this stuff, they're horrified. But anyway, let me go back with this whole Green New Deal. And I absolutely believe it would be an economic nightmare. Everything that's being said on the right about what an economic nightmare, absolutely I agree with that. So I don't need to repeat any of that here. I'm trying to think about what do I bring that might be a different perspective. So here I am looking at, okay, I actually like this magazine. Except they say some mean things about Trump every now and again. I don't like that part. But it's called the Washington Examiner because they have in-depth articles that are very good. This one, I shouldn't get so emotionally involved, but it turned my stomach. It really distressed me. So this is a Washington Examiner, February 5th, 2019. A potential biodiesel bonanza. The Green New Deal has lobbyists geared up. The biodiesel industry, the little brother to big ethanol, is growing, and they're looking for a big break from a Democrat-controlled House that is focused on climate change. Biodiesel companies, now let me just say bio anything, diesel, ethanol, whatever, it is just not a good way to go. I mean, using agriculture land on this hokey idea that you're going to somehow help climate change, it's BS. Okay? I'm trying to keep my language clean. I shouldn't have said that. It's not a good idea. Biodiesel companies are beefing up their teams of lobbyists in Washington to watch for opportunities in the Green New Deal. Chief among their goals would be securing a long-term production tax credit, which the Democratic leadership supports. The companies include some of the largest agribusiness companies in the world, such as Archer Daniel Midland, and account for nearly 5 billion gallons of fuel a year. Okay. Now the problem with this is like the problem with ethanol in gasoline. First of all, ethanol in gasoline makes gasoline less efficient. But, and pretty much everybody, even I think Al Gore, when they originally wanted that, they thought that, somehow that helps climate change when this was instituted. And now nobody thinks it helps climate change. Nobody thinks it helps climate change. But you have a huge farm lobby that insists that you've got to have a certain amount of ethanol put in gasoline. So it's bad on all accounts except for farmers, okay? Because they're growing the corn, and you can't get rid of it once you get a lobby set up. So I'm thinking, oh my God, now you're going to have biodiesel. And even when we later don't want to do it, even later when we know it's inefficient, once it's there, you can't get rid of it. So that depressed me. I shouldn't say depressed me, it upset me, okay? And then here's another one. Actually, this was from a newsletter from the Washington Examiner. So, reality check. Cost of Green New Deal would dwarf moon landing, highway system, and New Deal itself. Now, when I read this, here's what struck me. They're just talking about how much it costs. But the underlying assumption is that it's still a good thing, but it just costs too much. One of the favorite comebacks Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has to anybody dismissing the Green New Deal as an absurd fantasy is to point to large-scale projects in the past, such as the New Deal, the highway system, and the moon landing. For a long time, liberals have used a variation of the idea. If we can land a man on the moon, we could surely fill in the blank. But pointing to big things we did in the past neglects to recognize two basic realities as to why the Green New Deal is something dramatically different that makes it laughable. One, it will be on a much larger scale than those past projects. And all this is true. It is laughable. It would be vastly bigger. And two, in prior areas, the cost of entitlement programs was significantly smaller. So there was no more financial flexibility for such initiatives. In other words, I guess we had more federal funds we could spend. Really? Okay? That's the reason not to do it? Okay, these are true. I agree. But it's a... I don't like to call things stupid, but what can I say? It is inane. It is counterproductive. It will mess up so many things. I mean, I think about this. I love to think about philosophy and things like that. I think, life has never been better. So we're trying to solve a problem that doesn't even exist. We have convinced a huge number of people that there's a big problem with some coming climate catastrophe. It's like, no, it's not going to happen. I mean, do you know how high CO2 levels have been in the past? I mean, they've been huge. And they don't always correlate with temperature except that when the Earth does get warmer, the oceans outgas carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxides go up after the oceans warm. But we have had much higher, like during the time of the dinosaurs, 5,000, 6,000 parts per million, or 2,000 or 3,000. It was just in the thousands, okay? And plant life was luscious. Luscious? Luxuriant. I think I had too much coffee. Anyway, whatever. So one of the things I've thought about, I used to listen to Scott Adams until he supposedly, I don't think he really did it. I think he was manipulating us. That's my guess. He tried to take an objective look at the whole climate change issue. There was something weird about that, and I just couldn't listen to him anymore. I was so turned off because especially like one time he said, I'm getting off the topic here. He said, how can you tell? One scientist says this, another scientist says, how can you know if you're not a scientist? It's like, you can know. Really? You can tell by how they present their arguments. You can tell by the arguments that are being made. I mean, think for yourself, people. I mean, they're not gods. But he said he heard an argument between Michael Mann and Judith Curry. And he couldn't tell the difference? Oh my God, you listen to Michael Mann, and even if you knew nothing about him, and there's plenty about him. Mark Stein wrote a whole book about even in the climate change community, they don't like him. I mean, they don't like a lot of his views. He's just pompous, and I mean, he throws out appeal to authority. Well, this group says it, and this group says this. And Judith Curry is a low-key, careful scientist. Yeah, I could tell the difference. So I thought, something's going on here. Anyway. But I did learn a lot from Scott Adams before he went off in his showing this other side. And one of them is he talked about this concept called think past the sale. And I thought, that's what's happening here. By using terms like clean technologies. You see, to me, it is not clean. It is not clean at all. That if you had solar panels, those are not clean. They got to be mined somewhere to get all the materials. You're going to have all these, and then they're dirty when dirt gets on them or things. What do you do when snow gets on? Whatever. You got to keep it clean. Then when they're all over, you've got to dispose of them. It's a lot of toxic chemicals. It's not clean to me. And then when you talk about windmills, oh my God, you've got to get all that material. You've got to build all this stuff. And something about that infrasound is not good for living creatures. It's not good for the human heart. There's some preliminary studies that say it's damaging to heart. So you got to get that way away from people. And then I think poor little birds flying through, they have no idea. Now I understand some things kill animals. But I would like to kill them for a good cause if you have to kill animals. Like, I'm on an all carnivore diet, okay? That's a good cause, but not for getting sliced up by turbines and just taking over the landscape. So to me, this is not clean technology. And then the renewable part, I think they're talking about the sun, which has got another 5 billion years. So, yeah, but the solar panels are just one piece of it. Okay, you're getting the sun when the sun is available. You're getting the sunlight and you're converting it but there's a whole lot else that's involved in making that into a workable energy system. Right now, we do not have really good energy storage because you have to store it because it's not there. And how long do you store it? Like, for example, and this was during the Super Bowl, which I ended up watching the last half. I don't usually watch it, but I did anyway. But the power went out in my neighborhood. But not for me. But I thought, what if I was a really big Super Bowl fan? I had friends over and I'm watching the Super Bowl, and the power went out. I mean, I live in a wealthy neighborhood, and we can't even have reliable power here. But I got a generator, 11 kilowatt generator, and I thought, I need a generator. I can't deal with this, particularly after my husband had a stroke. It's like, well, actually, he had a stroke on the very day the generator was getting installed. But anyway, I thought, I don't want to have to be lighting candles and all the stuff that I used to do. So, but it's a fossil fuel generator, it runs off natural gas. So I'd have to lose natural gas before I'd use that. Before I would use that power. So anyway, back to Scott Adams and thinking past the sale. I think what has happened to many people, and I see this over and over again, is they talk about like, well, we have to have fossil fuels now, people, but we'll eventually go to renewables. No, we won't. Well, that will never be a good source. And I mean, I actually believe that. I do think that we'll have new technologies. And so I'm all for studying nuclear energy more. I really don't think fusion is... There's a joke about fusion. And the joke is that it's always 25 years in the future. I was reading about it in 1970 and getting excited about it. And it still is not here. Because just because you obtain it, it's got to be economically feasible. But I do think we could do a lot with nuclear energy. And the thing I like about nuclear energy, you could say, well, they don't have any emissions. Yes, that's true. That makes it nice. You don't have to have anything to clean up. I don't really care about the CO2 part, but they don't have CO2 emissions. For those that do care about that. But what I like is that it gives you a lot of energy in a very small, concentrated space. And people think, oh, we're going to run out of stuff. And here's what I would like. Do you know how big the Earth is? To me, it's like you go to the beach and you had a teaspoon and you're picking up some sand, putting it in a cup. Maybe even less than a teaspoon. Well, you could make the argument, be careful, because if you put, I don't know, a teaspoon of sand in a cup, I haven't done the numbers on this, so don't quote me. You know, you're going to say, hey, we're going to run out of sand if you keep doing that. A tiny teaspoon. And a big beach. I mean, there's so much. Do you know, 70% of the Earth is water. We have the ocean floor. I mean, we have so much. And then if it starts to become scarce, then it becomes more expensive. So when oil became really much more expensive, like in 2008, people were really complaining about it. I don't know, it was well over $100 a barrel. I don't remember the exact number. But then there was more emphasis put on fracking because now you can make some money. The frackers could make money. And they really got good at fracking. And with advances in fracking and the horizontal drilling, suddenly fracking took off. And now the U.S. is the leader in oil and natural gas production in the world. We already were the biggest coal production. So when we had the most coal, we were the Saudi Arabia of coal. And we still are. we are a country rich in natural resources. I love this country. And so, and I love science. I love clear thinking. I really have been so dismayed that I do recognize that not all areas of science are the same. That once you get areas politicized and money is involved and people's careers are involved, then it changes things. And so one of the things when you're looking at science and trying to evaluate for yourself is to ask yourself this question. First of all, if it's science, it makes pretty good predictions. And second of all, when someone questions it, you don't attack them. You attack their argument. And if they're way off the wall and their argument makes no sense, you don't have to deny them. You don't have to say, we're never going to let that person talk. Or you don't have to call them names. Their arguments just won't go anywhere. Take, for example, the issue of evolution. Some people compare it to that. And no, I mean, I've come to the view that if somebody doesn't want to believe in evolution, fine. Don't believe in evolution. But you're never going to be a good biologist. You're never going to be able to do good research because evolution, and it doesn't mean around the edges we make some changes in what we think about evolution. That's different. But you just can't ignore it. It's like a fundamental thing. But somebody playing around with climate models on the mistaken belief, or really a religious belief, that it's CO2 that drives the climate, that we know how to control this. Okay? We know how to, we're responsible. Okay? Now maybe they thought people were responsible back then when it got cold. That was called like burning witches or whatever. Because people have always been weird about the climate. And they attacked. Maybe Aztecs did, sacrifices. And it's been a real eye-opener for me in thinking about people in my life. I think a lot about that, especially since I just turned 65 and I'm a senior citizen now. It really is a weird thing to see yourself at that age and think, oh, I'm at the end game now. But I have to accept that people are this way. And so I both want to accept it, but I want to do my part to hopefully get people to think about things and don't throw away a good thing, and don't worry about problems that are not really problems. So thank you for listening, and hope this was useful.